If we come back to those three questions, research-informed teaching for students, for academic research, and for academic culture. For students, the discussion in this area tended to focus on level and role. It's taken that as students progress, they become more relevant to the research process and actually become co-researchers as masters and doctoral students. So clearly there's the research informed there. But throughout their study, they are being guided by the canon of literature, the research that sits at the heart of a discipline. There's debate here over to whether this is research per se or knowledge. And when does it make the transition from being innovative new research to the taken for granted knowledge? Often, a lot of the discussion in this area focused around there. For academic research itself, the issue was how can the researcher be complemented by their fellow student researchers? Can they be supported? And a lot of the time they can, both of them as active researchers, but as people to question and engage with the research process. The culture of research is something that lives as the dynamic interplay between those things, the lived experience between those doing the research and those going on to engage or perhaps reflect on and build on the research. So it does appear to be of value, and the discussion was free-ranging between these areas. The support for research is important because we can take an angle that this is mostly about teaching. It isn't. It's equally about the research process. In the 2014 REF, they defined research, the process of investigation leading to new insights effectively shared. And I think it's the effectively shared that's important here, because going to a group of students and explaining a piece of research can be incredibly insightful because they have none of the assumptions the research team does, and they can question you in a unique and really helpful manner. I've taken a lot of research to my students, and in doing so, I've seen a lot of the flaws, a lot of the areas where we need to enhance how we're articulating things, because they are not part of the discourse that has designed it. So they are an important part in actually enhancing research, not just being subject to it. Here, what I've done in an ordinary session is to work with us over a more extended period about research-informed teaching and how research should be defined. Now, this is important depending on where you find yourself within the academic range. There are those very much who see themselves as practitioner-based, who may be working in legal fields, paramedic areas, who see themselves linked to a profession and driven by that profession while referencing research. There may be others who perhaps see themselves very much as academically driven, that their discipline exists in isolation in the university but then goes out into the broader communities. So how should we define it? Is what a professional practitioner does research-informed teaching? Is it different? Is it the same? But also there's a question of, can you actually have higher education that's not research-informed? So is there any element of teaching methods, teaching underlying principles that isn't research-informed? This can get quite existential. And it goes to what I've mentioned earlier, this notion that when is knowledge research and when is it knowledge? So if you're teaching someone new ways of resuscitation, when it's a new way of artificial respiration and resuscitation of patients, then perhaps that's research informed. But once that has become the accepted way of doing it, is it still research informed? What's the relationships there? And equally, are there areas of a course where research informed teaching is essential, that we cannot do it without considering how research informed teaching works? These tend to be, via the discussions we've had so far, identified as being the research modules, where the student becomes the active researcher, where they begin to question their discipline. and begin to really unpack what it is to generate knowledge and insights, the evidence base that your discipline uses. So here, what we were trying to do as a wider group was really get to grips with how research-informed teaching can be defined outside of the strictest boundaries of lab research or something like that, to include the professional perspectives, recognising that there is a difficulty on the edge of research of what is taken to be innovative new research and accepted knowledge. And finally, the engagement of students as researchers. And there are very few elements, but important ones, where they develop their research skills that must be research informed in order for them to be effective. So what's SHU's position? What's this place that employs us, and what do they say about research informed teaching? So if you look to the Shaping Future strand from the 2020 vision of the university, which I do imagine you've got by your bedside, it states, to use our research engagement and output to support outstanding learning experiences for students across all of our teaching, helping our students realise their full potential and ensuring our research positively impacts on students' learning. Well, it's quite clear. This university takes it to be incredibly important. It takes every element that was referred to in the ref and the TEF and put it into the vision of the university. So when it comes down to that, or another damn thing to do, which was that opening statement about research-informed teaching, I think this gets us back to perhaps it's not wise to think of research-informed teaching as somehow separate, as somehow different, but rather that research-informed teaching is what we do. It's not special, it's everything and how we do it. So what might research-informed teaching look like? The following categories have been come up with by Griffiths from 2004. So there is the research-led, which is the curriculum is structured around subject context, specialist research interests of the staff. Now I'd almost call that the classic research-informed teaching, where you, your colleagues as researchers, take their knowledge and put it straight into the curricula. But there are other approaches as well, such as research-orientated, and that's understanding the process by which we create knowledge. The research itself, those research modules we teach with our students, the dissertations and so on. Research-based, and this is really that notion of the canon, that knowledge that sits at the heart of a discipline, and we base everything we do upon it. And finally, research-informed, and that's the notion of trying to take good pedagogical inquiry and the latest, most innovative ways of doing it to ensure our scholarship is at the highest possible levels. So those are the various ways we can look at research-informed teaching. I'll cut a break there. We'll come back and unpack these a little bit more as to how we as academics can create positive research-informed environments.